Good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday, a little afternoon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm Erika Heald, your content chat host. Today, I have a real treat for you because I have not one, but two former Schwabies. Schwabi being a term of endearment that we all use as being part of the team at Charles Schwab and Company, where I spent a decade, most of which working with these two ladies who are my guests today. We're gonna talk about a very unusual benefit of having a content strategy, because I'm always on the lookout to share with folks some of the kind of interesting use cases or unintended awesome consequences of spending that time to really get to know your brand voice and have that documented content strategy. And that's totally what we're going to dig into today. So, Rachel, let's start with you. Who are you? What do you do? And then I'll let you hand it off to Jenny as well.
Great. Thanks, Erica. Thanks so much for having us. And yes, thank goodness for some of those magical moments back in the day when we were all client and corporate side where we all met one another. So again, super grateful to be here and to have stayed in touch all these years. So as you know, it was 15 years on the client side. Prior to that, I'd always been more on the agency side of things. And I've been a lifelong entrepreneur in different ways. And I think entrepreneurship is one of those things that you just can't shake it. Like once you get that itch, it needs to be scratched. So while I had some personal reasons to make a career change, I was still a fairly new mom and just wanted a bit more flexibility. And again, I had that kind of entrepreneurial drive creeping up on me again. And as I was thinking about it, and I've talked a little bit about this in some other areas where I've spoken, is just being a bit more intentional this time around at the age I was when I started what was formerly Blu Pagoda. And I really wanted to think about doing a business that was a little different. And just not flexibility for me, but for flexibility for a lot of people. And having a focus on community as well. Really kind of three constituents: consultants, clients, and community. And really trying to pull those together in a new and different way for a business. And so that was in 2014. So 10 years ago, November, actually.
I remember, because that's, that was a year after I'd left Schwab.
Yeah. So it's been quite a journey, and super exciting that we brought on Jenny earlier this year, just in February, to really say, okay, we've been in business 10 years. It's kind of a big inflection point, I think, that 10-year mark.
So Jenny, talk about yourself. What got you interested in joining what was then Blu Pagoda, and what are you doing these days?
Well, the little secret here is that Rachel and I were BFFs at Schwab. So it wasn't like we ever went far. And so I would feel like I was sort of the aunt to Blu Pagoda. I watched it grow up and, all of that. And I did have that background of what it meant, to Rachel, the personal symbolic meanings and all of that. But I could also see some of the confusion or lack of total understanding of what it was all about. Why is it spelled blue? People have asked us what a pagoda is. I mean, there's a list of really hilarious interactions. But after Schwab, I then went to BlackRock. I was at Accenture. I sort of did the opposite of what Rachel did. I went super corporate. And let's just say the more we talked about it, the more this seemed like a dream, just a dream for me to basically do all the things I wish I had more time to do at these other places and bring that experience to bear. So it was a no-brainer decision. Took a little bit of convincing, I will say. It was a no-brainer. It was like, am I ready to make this leap to an entrepreneurial situation?
Well, let's start with the question that I, kind of kicked off with. How is it like what were you when you were defining your content strategy or putting together the calendar and executing against it? Talk to me about how that ended up sparking the conversations around, hey, maybe this is a good time to rebrand. Because I think again, so many companies, their content strategy, yes, it will align with the business goals and all these things, but it's pretty rare that the content strategy is that driver that really causes a brand to evolve. And I love that. So I really want to dig in
Well,
there.
I'll jump in first if that's okay, Jenny. I think part of it was um, a recognition that it was no longer, we didn't want it to be strictly identified with me, the person. And Blu Pagoda was a name that I had come up with, as many of your readers and listeners may find, coming up with names is really hard. So at the time, that's what I had. And for me, it was really representative of where I was. I love the color blue as a meaning of communication is often associated with blue. I love the idea of good fortune and kind of this house, if you will, for community and consultants and clients. But it just started to become too complicated and difficult to communicate. And I think when you think about content strategy, it's all about like communicating who, your what, and your why. And so with Jenny coming on board, it kind of gave me a bit of freedom to say, I'm okay starting from scratch a little bit here. Like, let's just, like, what would you do from a content strategy standpoint that could potentially reflect in a brand?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say, the conventional wisdom is don't rebrand because you're bored, like, but we really had evolved in 10 years. And where we'd evolved, you could see it when I did the content audit. It was about community. It was about our thoughts. It was about our thought leadership and our people. And so we'd sort of, in a way, started behaving like a company with a different name. And I didn't want to do anything that would take away from the beauty that was Blu Pagoda. It was a very special kind of development that came up of we treat each other as a collective. It's very collaborative. It's very supportive, very community oriented. I think it's a differentiator. But also, most of our people aren't looking to climb the corporate ladder. They've done that, or they've decided that the work-life balance is different, more important to them. So how we approached it was, how do we take what's already happening? How do we take the thing that has catalyzed already and give it a name that's intelligible, or at least doesn't make people go, wait, what? And so that was our first goal, was just to not have it be a hindrance. And we call it like bless and release, to let it go and thank it for its service and then evolve to the next thing. And so the content strategy became the framework in which we're able to talk about it. But I think, in fairness, so much of that had already been happening.
I think, from my perspective as somebody, who's known Rachel for so long now, of course, when you open up Blu Pagoda, you were a solopreneur like me, and you worked with, lots of contractors, but over time, it really grew and it evolved naturally
Yeah.
because you attract people to you. Part of the building community and being involved in community is not just in your physical community where you are, it's also building that community with your clients, with the people you work with, etc. So, I mean, I think over time, a brand is always going to evolve. So that does make a lot of sense. And I love how, Jenny was able to do a content audit and really see
Yeah.
how things had changed over time, because it went from being Rachel talking
Mhm.
about her values and, and ran what you wanted to do as an organization, to now you have all these different people and their voices and their perspectives that are part of the content. And I think Blu Pagoda was so really connected with you, Rachel, because
Yeah.
of the fact that it had to be because
Right.
when you're starting up and you're that person, I think that's going to happen. So
Well, it's
definitely.
not, sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
It's not unlike, if I can, we don't need to dwell on Schwab forever, but a little bit of the talk to Chuck. Not everyone can be in the spirit of Chuck, but there's only one Chuck.
Yep.
Everyone can be in the spirit of Rachel in the sense of how we're acting and how we're interacting with our clients and our communities. But if everything had to go through Rachel, we had quite it's a little bit of a backlog of things that happen. And then another thing we're doing, I mean, this is all sort of posturing for what does the next 10 years look like? And so how do we help our operations and everything else streamline to deliver on this promise we're making to ourselves and each other and our clients and communities?
I think it also speaks to like just trying to make it easy, like
Yeah.
everyone, whether it's our clients, our consultants, our community members, everyone has a lot going on. So wherever we can make it easier, that's definitely part of our ethos as well.
I get that. And I mean, that's one of the big reasons that I branded just around my name, even though as an introvert, that's not my first choice, but just understanding the amount of work that goes into expressing and informing people about a brand. I'm like, well, this is the path of least resistance. This is the easiest way of doing it because, what they're buying is that consulting time with me. And yes, I have a team, but for me, this was really easy. And I think in the same way, I love your new name because it is a real nice way of making it at a glance clear, your approach and what you do. And to that end, did you guys end up having like a content marketing mission statement or updated brand statement that, really kind of led to the name?
Well, yeah, I suppose, put it this way, a lot of great thoughts and ideas went into it. The name, I'll be honest, was not our first, second, third, or fifth thing, but it was absolutely the right choice. It just had to come. So we talk about, our quarterly overarching themes. We have rest. We have the idea of rest. We all have bodies, and we want to make sure that that's part of how we work. We're collaborative and connected. And just a few of these words started to bubble up more and more. And we really like the CO part of it because we do communications, we do consulting, we do content, we are collaborative. CO words, because we have these things called courageous conversations, CO. So if you notice, the logo is sort of a abstracted CO. That's one of the things we really thought about is, okay, this is for today, but what are the legs? How can we extend it beyond today? And how can not only we be the ones to extend it, but our consultants and other people, our partners working with us, have the vocabulary and the resources to extend it on their own. In other words, we don't want to make sure everything has to go through, be very rigid. We wanted to make it expansive. So.
And I know you guys worked with a branding agency, which, so often as marketers, if we run our own consultancy or agency, we start to feel like we have to do everything ourselves. So I'd love to kind of dig in a little bit and see, how did you find a branding agency that felt like a good fit? Because again, marketers are really tough clients of other agencies.
Agree. And I mean, first of all, we knew that we didn't want to do it ourselves because that would just be like a complete echo chamber. I'm not sure how much progress or creativity we would have brought forth. So I had met Brian Branham at Third Rail Creative quite some time ago. And we serve some clients in common. They are more kind of digital advertising agency branding. And when Jenny and I started talking about this, I immediately thought of Third Rail Creative because I feel like we share a lot of values with them. we just gel really well together. They are also very collaborative, and just loved working with them. I mean, they brought some new ways to us of thinking about what the brand could be, some really interesting questions, and we just had a lot of fun. So there was a lot of joy in the process. Jenny, I'll let you chime in there too.
Oh, I agree with everything you said, Rachel. I think you can't just be talking to ourselves. And in fact, when we first started throwing names around unofficially, we did talk to ourselves a lot. We could see where how this could lead to lots of hours and no thing. And they were really great because I think you know, we're all marketers. We did the best brief. We were so proud to present it. We'd thought of everything, and we were basically just going to let them, take the jar, undo the lid. We done all the rest. No, they asked us a lot of really great questions. I mean, simple things like, what utensil would you be? What music would you be? But it led to discussions that were very enlightening. And we had to make a decision. Like, we weren't sure if we wanted to be really folksy and homespun or have a little more polish. Like, it's not unlike a sort of a therapy session of how do you want to show up. And I just think they led us through that in such a great and productive way. And we ended up with something that we could never have done because the additive insight.
What did the kind of the process look like? Because of course, finding the new name, finding a new logo, all of that kind of stuff, it's the easy part. But then you actually have to take a look at all of your, company assets, all of those content assets. So I'd love to hear, what that process looked like and some of the unexpected things that kind of cropped up, because we always think it's going to be a lot easier to rebrand than inevitably it is.
Yeah, I'll start that. I will say, this is the beginning. It doesn't all have to be done at once. There are some things that had to be done, the website, our socials, but we just had a really long list of current assets. And being from a content strategy, you're like, okay, who are the audiences? What are the channels? And what are the messages on each one? So that sort of already existed. And we just divided and conquered. We use a project management system. So we say, okay, phase 2, we're going to do all of our internal, documents or something like that. But we knew what had to happen first. The other thing we thought about were the different audiences. And I think this is important that we brought along the internal, what I consider internal, all of our consultants along with it, because they feel a huge affinity for Blu Pagoda, or felt.
Yeah.
We actually had a Blu Pagoda Slack channel where you could write things that you're going to miss or something like that. I don't think anyone contributed, but we made it clear that was, you weren't having to never speak of this again. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was a thank you. And we brought along our clients. We sent them notes ahead of time telling them what was going to happen. We didn't want anyone to be surprised.
Yeah.
We had a social media teaser campaign where we had quotes.
I remember seeing them.
Awesome women, ending with the awesome woman that founded Collabry as the last one, and sort of just brought the public, our public, as it were, along. So I think that it was not making it a unilateral decision or feeling that way, but bringing everyone along really helped.
I agree. And I think our experience with not dissimilar types of projects for our clients over the years, like, we clearly know what's in a day 1 column versus a day 2 column.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of plan a roadmap for the timing and taking the pressure off where we could. And yet I am still frankly amazed at how quickly we were able to do it. I think some of our first meetings with Third Rail were in May, were they not, Jenny? Or March. And then we launched June 21st. So that's not a long timeline to do a new brand launch. But I think just the, again, not to overuse the word collaboration, but there was a lot of collaboration and understanding along the way. And the support of our amazing consulting team and the grace from our clients as well made such a huge difference.
Well, it's interesting because two of the things that you guys mentioned really stand out to me, because having done these kinds of projects before and just in general doing so much on the B2B side, the two kind of unusual things I heard is, one, that you made sure you had the internal buy-in, that you really focused on internal communications and giving people the chance to say goodbye to the brand, because internal comms are frequently an afterthought. You would not believe how frequently I hear from folks that, they basically found out about their company Rebrand the same time that the public did, which is terrible, right?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But also, mentioning the communications you did to your clients, because probably the least frequent thing that anybody does on the B2B side is really think about, after the sale, keeping the engagement with the clients and, keeping up with them if they're not an active client. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about, your client information approach.
Yeah, I think the way that we also combined it with our 10-year anniversary helped as well. We kind of bundled it together. It's like, we've been in business for 10 years. We're not the same company we were in 2014. And this is an exciting change. So I think being able to share that excitement with the client while also being able to assure them that this was not going to be disruptive. Again, we try to be the make it easy place. So we were able to handle things very easily, like whether it was, supplier document updating, that type of thing. So we were able to approach the rebrand in such a way that it didn't disrupt that side of the business. And just kind of honoring the clients as well, because they too have been a collaborative partner for us for the last 10 years. And so the feedback that we received from our clients that week leading up to launch was just so wonderful, and a lot of little goosebump moments for sure. So it was. I'm glad we took that approach.
And how about the internal team? What did they say when you guys had, the all hands to talk about it before letting everyone else know?
I think it's interesting. I think in some ways there was a little bit of sadness for some folks, especially that have been with us for a long time. And then also wanted to make sure I was okay, which was so sweet. Like, Rachel, are you okay? Like, no, like I'm 110% on board. This needs to happen. And but then, like, once we got past those two little pieces and just kind of processed any kind of oh, that was so good. And yeah, but now we're moving on to something else. Just a lot of excitement and a lot of pride as well, and getting to use this great new name and new color palette and everything else.
I think that there was, I know I have this challenge all the time. How do you explain this to people? And so we gave them boilerplate content to put on their socials, or as they're talking to their parents or whatever, to use the same words. It sounds so silly, but we didn't really have a codified way of explaining what it is we did. So we say, I'm going to read it, but Collabry is a consulting and communications collective, important word, of experienced professionals. We don't like seasoned because they sound like we're going to eat them, who deliver results with empathetic expertise. And you can unpack that however you'd like as it makes sense, but every one of those words is doing a lot of work. And so I think we gave them the ability to talk about it outside. And there's 3 of us full-timers and over 50 consultants. And why wouldn't we want to activate our army to be able to talk about this great company? So we kind of gave them the wings to do that.
It's so smart. And I will tell you that every time we're brought in and do a social media audit, one of the very first things we always recommend is that they take the time to write that core
Mhm.
description of who you are and what you do. Because if you don't, it means you end up having all of these folks out there talking about your brand differently, which then
Exactly.
causes confusion. And it's especially terrible if you have a large leadership team and every single one of them talks differently, incredibly differently, about what it is that they're doing at your company and what your purpose is. So I
And
love that you thought of that.
especially if you are somewhat conflict averse or more collaborative, you don't want to say, no, that's not it. You're like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then you say something totally different. Like, no, we actually need to have this formalized way of talking about ourselves. And then you can explain using your own examples. Yeah.
So after going through this process, what are some of the takeaways that you guys have, or things that you learned that would be valuable for other content marketers or other small businesses that are thinking about making this kind of a rebranding change?
I think going back to what Jenny was saying earlier, first of all, about not doing it just because you're bored. Um, and I mean, a lot of us as marketers know this. We're always the first to get sick of a campaign, right? Because we've seen it so many times, or a tagline or whatever. But putting yourself in the shoes of the rest of the universe out there that hasn't seen it a lot. So that's definitely not where we came to the decision to do a rebrand in the first place. It was really about capturing where we are today and where we want to go,
Mm-hmm.
and finding a way to more easily communicate that, and also in this kind of beautiful thematic way through content strategy, which I love. And just having the intent and thoughtfulness, like what's the why behind your rebrand, I think is something super important to consider.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I do think that thinking about the different audiences and even sub audiences within that, our partners, our long term clients, our prospects, how we introduce this concept is really just a gift that we get to we get to have this discussion, and then we layer on it with other content pieces we're doing. For example, for our 10th anniversary, for our long-standing clients, we gave them the ability to uh, give to a charitable organization of their choice. So we're very much about how we're good together and
Mhm.
paying it forward and taking care of the community, and people who are taken care of tend to take care of others, and all of that, and just showing it wherever we can. And I think having that crystallization of what we're about has really helped to make the additional content pieces easier to land on. Is that about our people? Is it about our thoughts? Is it about our community?
Yeah, definitely. I think the other point I would make too, Erica, is don't let fear of what you think the cost is going to be stop you. Because definitely I was like, oh my gosh, if we're going to hire an outside agency, it's going to be crazy. I'm trying to make sure our CFO was on board with it as well. But I can tell you, it's not as crazy as we thought it was going to be. It was very reasonable and worth every penny for how it allowed us to be in and a part of the process with people that we trusted, that had the creativity that I know that I couldn't have gotten to personally. So I think that was an incredible learning as well for me personally.
Did you find that going through this process and having these conversations with current and former clients, did it, change or, expand or, those current relationships? Like, do you feel like it had an impact above and beyond just doing a better job of communicating, who your brand was? Did it
I
connect?
think I think so. What it gave us an opportunity to tell our story of today, because certainly some of our longest tenured clients, started with me when it was just
Yeah.
me, and it was largely me doing communications writing.
Mhm.
And we have since expanded so much organically and thoughtfully into project management and program management, business analysis, integration. So doing technical and non-technical, and yes, also doing the marketing and editorial side as well. So in some ways, this rebrand allowed us to update our community on our story and who we are.
That's so valuable.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And Jenny, is, being a new person coming in with, your role around brand, like how exciting was that to be able to come in, help, make this happen, and then be able to, combine it with the strategy to plan forward.
Right. I mean, that's why I said it was a no-brainer. I was like, is this all really happening? Especially having been at much larger organizations in the past, this would have been a multi-year, matrix, so many more hurdles to go through, not to mention costs.
Yep.
So it was really so liberating.
I mean, I remember an 18-month rebranding project I was part of.
I think that this is the beauty of how we work, and it was just a pleasure. So, and in fairness, we earned it. We put in the time before. We knew a lot of what to watch out for, and if I don't say so myself, I think we're really good collaborative partners with our agency. I think it was mutually beneficial, and we hope to do more with them.
So, obviously you can't really look in your crystal ball and see the future, but let's say 10 years from now that the collaborative is looking, the collective is looking to refresh the brand. What are some of the things that you learned from this that you might do a little bit differently next time?
I think personally, again, a lot of small business owners, solopreneurs are going to appreciate this. Like, you being the CTO as well is not always the most fun. So things like updating email addresses and platforms and all of that, not the most fun. Lots of testing to make sure it's working properly.
URL redirects aren't your happy place.
New. But I think having a little bit of tech support is definitely something that if I were to ever do it again, I'd put a little bit more emphasis on. But yeah, I feel like this name is going to take us far into the future. So yeah, I mean, the other day I was writing out 2030 on a planning document, which in and of itself felt really weird to do. But yeah, I see this brand going so far and so long, and I'm just super excited about it.
I love that. Was there anything you would add, Jenny?
I'd add two things. And one is the idea of kill your darlings. We do tend to get very precious. We humans tend to get very precious about something that we feel this affinity for, and it absolutely is that. But I really think in this process, letting go of some of that and coming to something even better it's a big life lesson. It was a great business lesson. I think we landed in the right place. And the other is a kind of sense of trust. I think especially for solopreneurs, but I can speak for myself and many of the roles I've had. I sort of felt like I had to figure it all out on my own, or I didn't want to show that I didn't know all of the things, like how to do a redirect. But that's also the beauty of this collective mindset. There's someone who knows and is willing to help, and you can find them. And so so if we were to do it again, I would rely on our community.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think back to what you were saying, Erika, about having a really succinct, let's say, mission statement or value proposition is so key. So basically, don't start embellishing on something that isn't already set, because you're going to have to redo.
Agree.
Yeah, don't paint a house that isn't done being built.
Yes. Yeah. And the other thing, we decided to go ahead and get this registered. So that has been a whole other learning experience for us in terms of working with a trademark attorney. Again, it's a process and it takes a while, but I just saw that as a way of like, if we're going to do this, let's really do this and have that be even an asset of the company. So I'm excited for that aspect too.
Well, I'm not going to ask you about your 2030 planning, but I do want to hear, after having gone through this and now, you've had some good time to sit with the new brand. What are you going to be doing differently from a content strategy standpoint in 2025 based on having gone through this and, seeing what people are doing? What are you going to be doing more of or less of? Like, how are things going to be different in 2025?
That's a very timely loaded question, Erica. I would say one of the things, and we learned this when we were trying to come up with names, and is focus.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we aren't a huge firm, and we want to do a few things and do them really well. And we all tend to get distracted by shiny things. And we have a whole list of things. We call it our what if document. What if I don't even want to say them because, they might happen. Then we say there's so many ways we could go. What is the thing we need to do in the very short term to, make sure that our clients are well served, our consultants are well served, and we have the diversity we need to be a healthy business? And then what do you add? Instead of, we could do this and we could do that. We could go to this conference. We could write a post about that. But what do we actually need to nail first? And having a little bit of, I'll say discipline, but.
Well, you have a documented content strategy and you're working with it instead of having random acts of content.
Exactly.
I love that phrase.
And it sounds so obvious, right? But so many people, they don't have that like place for the what ifs to live. And literally it can be a spreadsheet, it can be a document. Just have that place where the what ifs can go and live.
Yeah.
So people feel heard. So they're still there when you have that extra time, extra money, or things change. But too often, every time a what if is floated by somebody with a C in front at the start of their title, people go chasing after it. And so pretty soon you don't get very much done. And you certainly aren't, executing against your content strategy, and everyone's exhausted and no resources are left. So that makes me sad when that happens. So I'm glad to hear you guys are doing the opposite of that.
Yeah, we're sort of focusing and giving things a chance to find out, did it really work or not? You don't change every week,
Right.
There's one thing about being agile, but there's another thing about sort of getting the data to support what you're going to do next. And you need a little bit more time for that.
And before we wrap things up, were there any like tools or resources, and that could be like books or websites or even people on LinkedIn that you follow that really kind of helped you, focus through this process? Or even just like a practice of things that you do?
We actually used AI to help with some of the name brainstorming, just finding different iterations. And it's so funny, like now I completely do not recall any of the other names that we had. Collabry's just dominated everything. But it was helpful. And looking at different things in our background as well. I was very aware of not misappropriating anything and using research to help ensure that was not the case. So I would say we used AI in a very effective manner. Obviously Third Rail was a great partner for us. Other thoughts, Jenny?
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's hard, Erica, the reason I pause a little bit is there's a pantheon of amazing authors and books that we read and talk about and all of that. And I think we tried to sort of also keep to feminist principles. Like I said, you have a body, and how we interact was really important and sort of baked into it. but I don't know that there was like, so you're ready to do a rebrand. Here's the book to read answer. Maybe we have to write that, but it would be really specific.
But I think it was also helpful. We work with a sales and business development mentor, Allison Davis. And I remember saying to her, like, we're thinking about doing a rebrand. I mean, what do you think? And I just really valued her. I think her words were somewhere along the line of, well, it wouldn't hurt. So to me, that was like, yeah, we need to, if we're going to continue to grow and be the company we want to be, it was time for a change.
Well, thank you both so much for coming on here today and sharing, this big process and change with everybody. If folks want to follow along and, hear more about Collabry and more about your process, where can they find you guys?
LinkedIn is our best. Speaking of focus, we don't try to be everywhere. LinkedIn is really where we post things about upcoming events, talks. We'll put this on there, that kind of thing. But we do have a blog that comes out about twice a month that talks about, guess what? People, community, and our thoughts. And so that's really the best way to keep up is with our Collabry LinkedIn. We can put it in.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Show notes. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Well, Rachel and Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody, tune in again next week for Content Chat. Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
so much for
Thank
having
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.